All right, before we even get into names, dates, or headlines, I need you to understand one thing. This entire situation feels way bigger than just a wedding dance. Because what we're watching unfold right now with the Beckham family isn't really about a single moment. It's about years of unspoken tension, power dynamics, and a son finally deciding to tell his side of the story, even if it means blowing up the image his family spent decades protecting. And that's why people are saying Victoria Beckham completely lost it after Brooklyn allegedly leaked wedding footage and reopened this entire chapter. So let's start at the very beginning, because context is everything here. Brooklyn Beckham's wedding was supposed to be untouchable. Not just a celebration, but a global statement. This was the Beckham brand at its peak. Luxury, class, exclusivity, perfection. The kind of wedding that doesn't just happen. It's curated. Palm Beach. Insane wealth. A guest list stacked with celebrities, moguls, insiders. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a public transition. Brooklyn stepping into adulthood, Nicola stepping into the Beckham world, and Victoria watching her firstborn officially leave the nest. That dynamic alone is emotionally loaded. Now here's where things quietly started to feel off. Even before Brooklyn said anything publicly, fans noticed strange details. The energy in certain photos, the absence of certain family moments, the way Nicola looked during parts of the reception. At first, people brushed it off. Weddings are stressful. Cameras catch awkward moments. But then, whispers started circulating. People close to the event hinted that something uncomfortable happened during the reception. Not dramatic, not scandalous, just wrong timing, wrong energy, a moment that landed badly. Still, no one spoke openly. For a long time, this stayed buried, quiet, unconfirmed, the kind of thing that only exists in private family conversations. Until Brooklyn spoke up. When Brooklyn finally addressed the wedding dance, it wasn't vague, it wasn't cryptic, it was emotional. He described feeling embarrassed, like a moment meant for him and his wife was taken over, like something deeply personal was disrupted in front of everyone he cared about. And that alone shook people. Because Brooklyn has always been the quiet one, the peacemaker, the kid who didn't really push back publicly. So when he chose to talk, it felt intentional. But here's where the situation escalated into what it is now. Recently, Brooklyn didn't just revisit the wedding incident. He brought it back into public focus in a way that felt strategic. The timing of his comments, the resurfacing of wedding-related moments, the way old footage and images suddenly started circulating again. Nothing blatant, nothing direct, but enough that fans connected the dots. And once fans start connecting dots, it's over. Suddenly, the internet wasn't asking, did something awkward happen? They were asking, why is this being brought up again now? And that's where the word leak entered the conversation. Now, let's be very clear. There isn't some crystal clear leaked wedding video floating around, but the implication that footage exists, that moments were recorded, and that Brooklyn might be okay with those moments being revisited publicly, that alone is explosive. Because from Victoria's point of view, this wasn't just her son sharing feelings. This was reopening a narrative she believed had been closed. According to people close to the family, Victoria genuinely thought this was dealt with privately years ago. Conversations happened, emotions were processed, everyone moved on, or at least that's what she thought. So when the story resurfaced, insiders say Victoria was completely blindsided. Not just annoyed, hurt. Because imagine spending decades building an image of control, elegance, and composure, only for the internet to suddenly label you as the overbearing mother who hijacked her son's wedding. That hits differently. Midway through this saga, people started noticing changes in Victoria's behavior. Subtle but telling. Her silence became louder. Her public appearances felt more rigid. Her interactions with Brooklyn and Nicola became distant. No warm defenses. No emotional interviews. No, we're a strong family statements. Just restraint. And that restraint is exactly why people say she lost it behind the scenes. Sources claim Victoria felt deeply betrayed by Brooklyn reopening the wound publicly. From her perspective, this wasn't a fair retelling. She believed the internet was stripping away nuance and turning a misunderstanding into a character assassination. And here's where things reportedly got tense. Behind closed doors, conversations turned heavy. Not screaming matches, those are rare in families like this. Instead, long, emotional discussions. Silence that stretched too long. Disappointment layered with frustration. Victoria reportedly felt that Brooklyn's version of events ignored intent, ignored context, ignored the fact that weddings are chaotic, emotional, and imperfect. But Brooklyn wasn't talking about intent. He was talking about impact. And that's the disconnect. Because for Brooklyn, that moment became symbolic. It wasn't just a dance. It was about feeling overshadowed on the one day that was supposed to be his, about not being able to fully step into his new role without old dynamics creeping in. And when Nicola's feelings entered the equation, everything changed. Multiple sources say Nicola was deeply upset during the reception. Some claim she left in tears. Others say she felt sidelined in a moment meant to celebrate her marriage. Whether every detail is true or not, one thing is clear: Brooklyn took it seriously. And that choice, that's where Victoria allegedly felt the real loss. Because when children get married, priorities shift, loyalty realigns, and parents don't always handle that transition smoothly, especially when they're used to being central figures. From Victoria's perspective, this wasn't just about being criticized online. It was about losing control of the narrative, losing authority, losing the ability to quietly handle family matters. And for someone whose entire life has been built on presentation and control, that's devastating. As the headlines kept rolling, the silence stretched. Fans started speculating even harder. Every Beckham family interaction became a clue. Every absence was dissected. And the idea that wedding footage exists, footage Victoria can't fully control, reportedly became her biggest fear. Because once something like that escapes into the public, context dies. Clips get cut. Moments get reframed. Intent doesn't matter. You become the villain. And that's why people say Victoria lost it. Not in public, not dramatically, but emotionally, privately. According to insiders, she felt misunderstood, exposed, and deeply hurt that this story was being told without her voice, that her role as a mother was being flattened into a viral narrative. But here's where this story gets genuinely complex, because it's possible Victoria didn't mean harm. It's possible Brooklyn genuinely felt hurt. Those truths can exist at the same time. But once social media picks a side, complexity disappears. And now the Beckham family is stuck in this uncomfortable limbo. No statements, no resolution, just tension simmering beneath the surface. And here's the part people aren't talking about enough. This isn't over, because as long as that wedding footage exists, whether it ever truly leaks or not, it hangs over this family like unfinished business. A reminder of a moment that should have been perfect, but wasn't. Every move from here matters. If Brooklyn speaks again, it escalates. If Victoria responds directly, it escalates. If footage ever surfaces, intentionally or not, it changes everything. So, did Victoria Beckham lose it after Brooklyn allegedly leaked wedding footage? Publicly, she stayed composed. Privately, according to those closest to the situation, it shook her deeply. And until this gets addressed honestly, not through silence, not through PR, the tension isn't going anywhere. If anything, it's building. And trust me, the internet is watching every single move. All right, let's keep going. And this is where we push into original territory. The stuff most videos don't talk about, but viewers subconsciously feel. Because once you strip away the headlines and the leaked footage phrasing, what's really happening here is a collision between two completely different generations, two different ideas of privacy, and two different ideas of power. And that clash is exactly why this situation feels so raw. Think about how Victoria Beckham grew up in the public eye. Her entire adult life was shaped by tabloid culture, pre-social media, pre-tell your truth culture. Back when silence wasn't just strategy, it was survival. When you didn't address rumors, you starved them. When you did, you fed them. Victoria learned very early that control equals safety. You don't explain yourself. You don't validate gossip. You keep moving, polished and unbothered. Brooklyn, on the other hand, grew up in the opposite world. A world where silence is suspicious, where emotional honesty is currency, where speaking out is framed as strength, not weakness. So when Brooklyn talks about feeling humiliated at his wedding, to him, that's not betrayal, that's authenticity. But to Victoria, that's airing family business in public. That's breaking an unspoken rule. And this is where insiders say things really snapped emotionally for her. Because from Victoria's internal perspective, this wasn't just about a wedding moment being misunderstood. It was about a son rewriting a family story in front of millions of strangers, without asking her first. People close to her say she felt stripped of context, reduced to a headline, cast as a caricature. And what makes it even harder is that Victoria doesn't get the luxury of being just a mom in this situation. She's a brand. Every negative narrative doesn't just affect her feelings. It affects her business, her reputation, her credibility as a designer, as a public figure, as a woman who worked relentlessly to be taken seriously beyond the Spice Girls era. So when Brooklyn's comments reignited the wedding discourse, insiders say it felt like everything she's built was suddenly being judged through one awkward family moment. That's exhausting. So when people say Victoria Beckham lost it, they're not talking about a tantrum. They're talking about the moment a woman who built her life on control realized she no longer had it. Not over the narrative, not over her family's image, and not over how her own son sees her. And that realization, that cuts deep. Which brings us to where this story is heading. Because unresolved family tension doesn't disappear, it mutates. It shows up in distance, in missed events, in silence that feels heavier than words. And if wedding footage ever truly leaks, intentionally or accidentally, it won't just settle the debate, it will reopen everything. So the real question isn't whether Victoria lost it. The real question is whether this family can move forward without choosing sides publicly. Because once sides are chosen, there's no going back. And judging by how carefully everyone is moving right now, they know that too. Anyway, this concludes today's video. Be sure to subscribe to LoafTube for future celebrity videos, and turn on that post notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Until then, see you in the next one.